Okay, welcome
Hello.
everyone. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you and to Kate Szegda. Hope I did it right.
You did.
Kate's a Jersey girl just like me. She grew up in the small Jersey town of Highland Park, which is about 10 minutes from where I live. And she also lived in Point Pleasant. And as a kid, she liked to play the trumpet, riding bikes, ice skating, and reading Nancy Drew mysteries. So did I. Kate is a teacher like I am, teaching background. She taught middle school language arts and she loves to read books with her students, loved to do that. Two favorites were Johnny Tremaine and Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Writing Pharmacy Girl has been her best experience since retirement. And it's historical research and it's based on your family history, which we'll talk about in a little bit. She says it's a lot like being a detective. So Pharmacy Girl was published in February 2019, and it's about the Spanish flu in 1918, which you wrote this book well before we are in the midst of our pandemic here. So although your book was written for middle grade readers, Kate, I think it's really a great book for parents and grandparents to consider reading and encouraging middle school students to read. So why did you write Pharmacy Girl about more than a year ago? How you must have started it 2-3 years ago, right?
Oh, actually a little longer than that. But Pharmacy Girl was a story I think I just had to tell. My family survived the influenza epidemic of 1918. And my mother would tell me about how she and her sister and other family members had the flu and survived. And I wondered why, because my grandfather owned a drugstore in Highland Park. And I thought, well, a lot of sick people are coming in that store. Why did my family survive? And I started to research it. I read a couple of books on influenza, and one thing led to another. And Pharmacy Girl is the result.
Well, I wanted to mention how we met. Since we're both to have a teaching background, we went to the New Jersey School Librarian Conference last December, and we shared a table. And we really got to know each other. And that's when this all started, and I thought about your book and meeting you, I thought, I just have to get in touch with you and see what you're thinking about. So you've been experiencing the same kinds of things we all have. Like I've had to cancel some events and you were not able to do the kinds of things you were going to do with your book. But has learning about the Spanish influenza pandemic helped you to cope with COVID-19?
I think I definitely, because I kind of knew what to expect. Even though COVID is very different and we find out something new every day about COVID-19, there are certain patterns to pandemics and epidemics. So the search for a vaccine, not understanding exactly what the nature of the virus is, all of that we saw in 1918. And it just helped me realize this is how it's going to be. It might be a long time. And there's going to be days when, you get differing information almost every other day. So it's helped me stay calm. And it's helped me realize, if my family can do this, I can do it too. And hopefully, for those people who read Pharmacy Girl, if the story in Pharmacy Girl will help the reader say to themselves, I can do this too. We're going to get through this.
Yeah, I think that's what I felt was so great about your book was that this is a story about real people that you've created, and these people are your family members and they survived, and they had some of the same recommendations back then, didn't they?
Oh, yes, social distancing. My mother and my aunt would tell me how uh, schools were closed and so forth. Not as long as in COVID, but schools were closed, and businesses did shut down. Restaurants, they used to call them saloons, bars and so forth, were shut down. But my mother and her sister, they were confined to the backyard in the house, actually the apartment over the drugstore. So they weren't going very many places at all. So there was definitely social distancing, and there was a whole lot of hand washing. Hot
So,
soapy water.
so this story is based on real people.
Yes.
And tell us about those real people and how you did research the book.
Would this be a good time to show a book that I used for research?
Sure.
Well, especially people from New Jersey, but you might be familiar with a series of books that have been printed about just about every town in America. And this is a story about Highland Park, New Jersey. And the family you see on the cover is my family. The man in the white shirt is my grandfather. The woman in white is my grandmother. And the little girl, who's about 2 years old, is my Aunt Juanita. And she became the model for Josie in the story.
So Josie is the main
Character.
narrator.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And this book helped me a great deal because many of the pictures that were used in this book were donated by my Aunt Juanita to the ladies who were putting together the book. So there are actually photographs of Highland Park in 1918 in here that were taken by my grandfather, and they helped to tell the story. And there's a picture of the fire horse that they used to use back in the day, and that helped me visualize the fire horse in the story, whose name is Ned. So this book was really a very inspirational and important piece of research material for me.
You know what? I just want to read the little summary of the book for the people that are listening that are not as familiar as I am with your story. So, Pharmacy Girl is a 2019 silver medal Moonbeam Children's Book Award winner for preteen and historical cultural fiction. And everyone likes Josie. Josie's the one you said that's based on your aunt, her character. Everyone likes Josie except the spoiled and arrogant Billy Detwiler. He calls her Pharmacy Girl, but he doesn't consider it a compliment. And the hazy days of September 1918 drift into the deadly autumn of the Spanish influenza. And 12-year-old Josie Winslow's everyday problems of school and friends and even the war efforts at home. I think people forget that we were in the middle of a World War I at the time. And all that, it's insignificant as everyone battles the epidemic. And Josie's parents try to isolate her from the flu, but Josie's no slacker. She faces Billy in class election. So they were in 8th grade.
Yes.
Many students today are in 8th grade and missing their graduations. And it's very much the kinds of experiences that our children that we know are living through right now. And again, I want to say the good news is that these children moved on and grew up, and your aunt is still around to be giving pictures of the family to someone that wrote a book about the town Highland Park. Tell me, there's a subtitle for Pharmacy Girl. What's the subtitle?
Well, the subtitle, I kind of did that tongue in cheek because it sounds so scholarly. It's the Great War, meaning World War I, Spanish influenza, and the truth about Billy Detwiler. And Billy Detwiler he's a fictional character.
Yeah, but I want to know that what's the truth about Billy Detwiler? Can you tell her, or does that give away the story?
Let me just tell you a little story. One of my friends was reading the book, and I got a text from her, and she was partway through the book, and all she could say was, "I just hate Billy Detwiler." So you'll have to read it to find out what happens with Billy Detwiler.
But it's the kind of things that in the story, the book has a lot of things that middle school students go through right today, still today. So a lot of this, I felt like I used to work in a middle school as well, and it was just very familiar, the way kids behave and the fun they have and the trouble they can get into. But it's an interesting, very realistic story. Can you tell us a little bit more about, besides the family history that you knew well, how did you research this book?
Well, one of the first books that I came upon, and this is the teacher in me, I have to show you a book, right? Okay, this is a very famous, it's one of the first popular books about influenza. It's America's Forgotten Pandemic by Alfred Crosby, a historian. And this is where I started my research. And again, you can see lots of notations. And let's see. Well, some of these are so highlighted, they're like 3 different colors, which tells you I read through the book 3 different times. But it was incredible information, very, very interesting. And I think if it's okay, one of the things I learned from Crosby's book, and again, another popular book is John Barry's The Great Influenza. People have probably seen this on Amazon or wherever they get books. But one of the things that struck me about Spanish influenza was not only did so many people die, in America, they estimate 675,000 people passed away from Spanish influenza. And I was struck also, Spanish influenza, and you hear this whenever people talk about Spanish influenza, is you could wake up with a headache in the morning and be gone by dinner time. For some people,
very frightening.
yes,
Like today,
right.
but again,
Yes.
I think that
But the one political piece or historical note I do want to share with everyone is that World War I ended on Armistice Day of 1918, November 11th. And in the winter of January and February 1919, President Wilson and his entourage are in France negotiating the, oh, here comes the truck. Oh, it's one. Okay. They're negotiating the peace treaty that will ultimately be signed at Versailles. And President Wilson came down with the flu, and it severely hampered his ability to be part of the negotiations. And you just have to wonder if that peace treaty, which is notorious for setting up World War II, if Wilson had been able to participate as a healthy man, would history have been different? That's pretty serious stuff, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
But I was greatly surprised by that, and I thought that was an interesting factoid.
So, Kate, we're just about out of time, but before we have to go, I wanted to give you a chance to tell people where they can find your book.
Okay, well, the easiest place to find my book is on Amazon. Just plug in Pharmacy Girl and it will take you right to the book. It's available as a paperback, it's like this, and it's also available for Kindle readers. Another place you could is if you go to the Hokasin bookshelf website, and that's in Hockessin, Delaware. I don't dare spell it. Hockessin.
Well, we could have that information on another location, but
Okay, all right. Well, the
store,
Hockessin Bookshelf is also carrying the book and can also make arrangements to order it for you, and we'll ship it to you. As well.
right. So bookshop.org also carries the book through that small bookstore.
Yes.
That's how they have it. Well, I really thank you for chatting with me today, and I think it's a great opportunity for, like I said, parents and grandparents to use your book. It's written for middle school. It's a middle grade novel, but I read it and it taught me some things that I was it just very familiar with. It was recognizable. I just loved seeing how the kids acted together, and I want everybody to find out about Billy, because
Me too.
he was a very interesting character. So thank you very much, Kate, and
And thank you, Eileen, for inviting me to do this interview. It's been fun, and I hope it's been uh, informative for people who are interested in finding out more about the flu or reading a good middle grade novel.
and they can get in touch with you by on your website too, right?
That's right. And my website is Kate Szegda, KateSzegda.com. It's my name.com.
That's easy. Great. Okay, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening.
Okay, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.